The message came at midnight, when the stars outside the viewport were cold and distant. Commander Ethan Cole sat alone in his quarters aboard the Horizon's Edge, a glass of whiskey untouched on his desk. He had been staring at the same report for an hour, reading the words over and over, hoping they might change. They never did. The door chimed. He didn't answer, but it opened anyway. Admiral Patricia Dunn's holographic image flickered into existence, her stern face softened by something that might have been concern. "You received the orders," she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You want me to kill the Void Queen. The Coalition wants the threat eliminated. You're the best operative we have." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The best? Or the most expendable? Patricia's jaw tightened. 17 colony worlds, Ethan. Millions of lives. She destroys everything she touches. Someone has to stop her. Ethan had heard the stories. Everyone had. The Void Queen commanded a fleet of ships that looked like they had been grown rather than built. They moved through space like predators, appearing without warning and leaving nothing but ash and silence behind them. No one knew where she came from. No one knew what she wanted. The few survivors described a woman who walked through fire without burning, who spoke with a voice that echoed in their minds long after she was gone. "Why me?" He asked again. "There are younger soldiers, faster ships, people with less to lose." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Because you've always been good at reading people, finding the truth behind the mask. I don't want a soldier who will charge in and die. I want someone who might actually succeed." Ethan looked at the orders again. Locate, engage, terminate. Simple words for an impossible task. And if I refuse, then someone else goes. Someone less capable. And they die, and the Void Queen keeps destroying worlds. Patricia's image flickered. "I'm not ordering you, Ethan. I'm asking. The Coalition needs this. Humanity needs this." He thought about the colonies he had seen during his 15 years of service. Families building homes on distant worlds. Children playing in the shadow of alien suns. All of it fragile. All of it precious. "I'll do it," he said. "But I'm taking my crew." Patricia nodded. "I expected nothing less. Good luck, Commander." "And Ethan? Be careful. There's something about this mission that doesn't sit right with me. Trust your instincts." The hologram faded, leaving him alone with the stars. The next morning, Ethan gathered his crew in the ship's small briefing room. They were a mismatched group, thrown together by chance and circumstance, but he trusted each of them with his life. Katie Vance sat at the front, her feet propped up on the table with casual disrespect for protocol. She was the best pilot Ethan had ever served with, able to make the Horizon's Edge dance through asteroid fields and enemy fire like it weighed nothing at all. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and her sharper tongue spared no one. Leo Martinez stood by the door, as if ready to leave at any moment. He was the ship's engineer, a quiet man who spoke more to machines than people. He had rebuilt the Horizon's Edge's engines from scrap after the battle at Kepler Station, turning a dying ship into something faster and stronger than it had any right to be. Dana Reeves sat apart from the others, her arms crossed and her expression hard. She was the tactical officer, responsible for weapons and defense systems. 3 years ago, her homeworld of Thessaly had been destroyed by the Void Queen's fleet. She had been off-world when it happened, visiting family on a neighboring colony. She had watched the news feeds, helpless, as everything she loved turned to fire. "We have new orders," Ethan said, bringing up the mission briefing on the central display. "We're going after the Void Queen." The room went silent. Kay's feet came down from the table. Leo stopped pretending to check his datapad. Dana's eyes blazed with sudden, fierce intensity. "When do we leave?" Dana asked. "As soon as we're resupplied." Intelligence suggests she was last seen near the Helix Nebula. We'll start there. The Helix Nebula is a death trap, Leo said quietly. Radiation storms, gravity wells, sensor interference. Ships get lost in there and never come out. Which is probably why she uses it as a hiding place, Katie said. Smart. Evil, but smart. Ethan looked at each of them in turn. This mission is voluntary. The odds of survival are low. If any of you want it transferred to another ship, I'll make the arrangements. Nobody moved. Dana spoke first. She took everything from me. I'm not walking away from a chance to return the favor. Katie shrugged. I've been flying this rust bucket for 6 years. If she's going down, I'm going down with her. Leo just nodded, his silence saying more than words ever could. Ethan felt something warm spread through his chest. Pride, maybe. Or gratitude. Then let's get to work. The Horizon's Edge launched from Station Omega 12 hours later, its hull gleaming under the artificial sun that lit the massive space dock. Around them, other ships came and went, carrying cargo and passengers to 100 different worlds. None of them knew that a small vessel was setting off to hunt the most dangerous being in the galaxy dot as the stars stretched into lines, and the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. Ethan sat in the captain's chair and watched the universe blur around him. He thought about Patricia's warning. Something about this mission didn't sit right with her. He understood the feeling. The Coalition had been fighting the Void Queen for years, throwing ships and soldiers at her with no success. Why send one small ship now? Why send him? The questions had no answers. Not yet. Course laid in, Katie announced from the pilot's seat. We'll reach the edge of the Helix Nebula in 72 hours. Get some rest, Ethan told his crew. All of you. When we get there, I have a feeling we won't have time to sleep. They dispersed to their quarters, leaving Ethan alone on the bridge. Through the viewport, the light of distant stars painted the darkness in shades of blue and silver. Somewhere out there, the Void Queen waited. Ethan didn't know yet that everything he believed was about to change. He didn't know that the monster he had been sent to kill was no monster at all. He only knew that he had a mission, and he would see it through, whatever the cost. The Helix Nebula was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Clouds of glowing gas stretched across the viewport in ribbons of purple and gold. Stars burned at the heart of the formation, young and fierce, throwing out radiation that made the ship's sensors scream warnings. The Horizon's Edge moved carefully through the chaos. Katie's hands steady on the controls as she navigated between gravity wells and energy surges. I'm getting something, Leo said from his station. Massive readings ahead. Ships. A lot of them. Ethan moved to stand behind him, studying the display. The contacts were enormous, each one larger than a Coalition battleship. They hung motionless in the shadow of a dying red star, arranged in a formation that looked almost ceremonial. 30 vessels, Dana reported, her voice tight. All of them matched the profile of the Void Queen's fleet. Katie whistled low. That's enough firepower to crack a planet in half. What's our play, Commander? Ethan stared at the display. 30 ships. The Horizon's Edge was fast and well-armed for her size, but against those odds, they wouldn't last 30 seconds. The mission was supposed to be covert. Get close, find a weakness, strike when the opportunity arose. But there was no getting close to this. The moment they entered weapons range, they would be vaporized. Hold position, he ordered. Let's see what they do. For a long moment, nothing happened. The biomechanical ships hung in the void like sleeping giants, their hulls glistening with something that looked wet, organic. Then every sensor on the bridge lit up at once. We're being scanned, Leo said. They know we're here. Should I power up weapons? Dana asked, her hand already hovering over the controls. No. Ethan's voice was calm, even though his heart was pounding. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. Let's see what they want. The answer came moments later. A transmission cut through all frequencies, overriding the ship's communication systems with ease that spoke of technology far beyond anything the Coalition possessed. A woman's voice filled the bridge, low and calm. "Commander Ethan Cole, I've been waiting for you." The crew exchanged glances. How did she know his name? How did she know they were coming? "Come alone," the voice continued. "Your ship will not be harmed. You have my word." Dana's hand closed on her sidearm. "It's a trap, probably," Ethan agreed. "So we run," Katie said. "Live to fight another day." But Ethan was already shaking his head. "If I don't go, she might decide to take what she wants by force. I won't risk this crew." "You're risking yourself," Leo pointed out quietly. "That's my choice to make." Ethan turned to face his crew. "If I'm not back in 6 hours, leave. Don't wait. Don't try to rescue me. Just go home and tell the Coalition what you found." Katie looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew him too well. Once Ethan Cole made a decision, nothing could change his mind. 6 hours, she said. "Not a minute longer." Ethan took a shuttle across the void between ships. As he approached the Void Queen's flagship, he began to understand why people called her fleet terrifying. The vessel was massive, easily 10 times the size of the horizon's edge, and its hull was covered in patterns that looked like veins beneath skin. Light pulsed through them in slow rhythms, like a heartbeat. A docking port opened as he approached, revealing a corridor that glowed with soft bioluminescence. He landed the shuttle and stepped out, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. The air smelled strange, like ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. "This way, Commander." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Ethan followed it, walking through passages that seemed to breathe around him. The walls were warm to the touch, and he could feel a faint vibration beneath his feet, like the ship itself was alive. The corridor opened into a vast chamber at the heart of the vessel. It was empty, except for a single figure standing at the center, silhouetted against a viewport that showed the burning red star beyond. She turned as he entered, and Ethan stopped breathing. She was human. Completely, unmistakably human. Young, perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of worlds. She wore no armor, carried no weapons. Just simple clothes that might have come from any colony in the Coalition. "You expected a monster," she said. It wasn't a question. Ethan found his voice. The report said I was a terror, a destroyer of worlds, a threat to all humanity. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. They weren't entirely wrong. Then why am I still alive? She walked toward him, her footsteps silent on the organic floor. "Because I've been waiting for someone like you, Commander. Someone who might actually listen before they shoot. I was sent to kill you." "I know." Senator Howard Clark signed the order himself. "He's been trying to have me killed for 12 years. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "My name is Grace Harper. I was born on Earth in a city called Portland. I had a family once, friends, a life." Ethan's hand hadn't left his pistol, but something in her voice made him hesitate. "What happened?" "I found something I wasn't supposed to find. And I made a choice that cost me everything." She gestured to the ship around them. "This is the result. I became what humanity needed me to become. And humanity decided I was easier to fear than to understand. The 17 colonies you destroyed were already dead when I arrived." Grace's voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Dead in ways that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life. I didn't destroy those worlds, Commander. I cremated them. And I killed the things that murdered everyone on them before they could spread to other planets." Ethan stared at her, What things? Grace turned back to the viewport, looking out at the dying star. Have you ever heard of the Devourers, Commander Cole? He hadn't. But by the time she finished explaining, he wished he never had. The universe was much darker than he had ever imagined. And the woman he had been sent to kill might be the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Grace led Ethan deeper into her ship, through corridors that pulsed with soft light and chambers that hummed with energy he couldn't understand. She walked ahead of him, her shoulders carrying a weight that seemed heavier than any armor. 12 years ago, I was a scientist, she said. A xenobiologist on the research vessel New Dawn. We were exploring the outer rim, looking for new forms of life. We found something no one expected. She stopped before a massive door that opened at her touch, revealing a room filled with floating displays. Star maps covered every surface, marked with symbols and colors that meant nothing to Ethan. We made contact with the architects, Grace continued. An ancient race that existed as pure consciousness within the fabric of space itself. They had been watching over the galaxy for millions of years. Protecting it. Protecting it from what? Grace touched one of the displays, and the star map changed. Red marks appeared across the galaxy, spreading like a disease. The Devourers. Creatures that exist between dimensions. They feed on conscious life. Not just the body, but the mind, the soul. Everything that makes a person who they are. When they consume a world, nothing remains. No ghosts, no echoes. Just emptiness. Ethan studied the map. The red marks were everywhere, scattered across every sector of known space. Why haven't we seen them? Because the architects held them back. Their consciousness created barriers that the Devourers couldn't cross. But the architects were dying. Their realm was collapsing, and with it, the barriers. Grace's voice grew heavy. They offered me a choice. Bond with their dying consciousness, inherit their power and their purpose, or watch as the Devourers consumed every living world in the galaxy. You chose to bond with them. I chose to fight. Grace turned to face him, and he saw fire in her eyes. I was a scientist, Commander. I had a family waiting for me back on Earth, a mother who still called me every week, a brother who was getting married that summer. But someone had to make the choice, and no one else was there. She raised her hand, and light gathered in her palm. It was beautiful and terrible. Colors that had no name swirling together like a captive star. This is what I became. Part human, part something ancient and powerful. I can feel every star in the galaxy. I can hear the whispers of the Devourers as they search for ways through the barriers I maintain. And I can destroy them when they break through. The 17 colonies were already infested when I arrived. Grace closed her hand, and the light faded. The Devourers are fast. They slip through cracks in the barriers, small ones that I can't always detect in time. By the time I reach a world they've touched, everyone is already gone, consumed, but their bodies remain, animated by the Devourer spawn, spreading the infection to every ship that comes to help. Ethan felt sick. So you destroy the evidence. I destroy the threat. The spawn can spread through space if they're not stopped. One infected ship can carry them to 100 worlds. Grace's voice broke slightly. Do you know what it's like to burn a world? To feel millions of empty bodies turn to ash and know that the people who lived in them are already gone. Already nothing? I do, 17 times. And I will do it 17,000 times more if that's what it takes to protect what remains. She walked to another display and pulled up a series of communications. Ethan recognized coalition military encryption. I tried to warn them, Grace said. In the beginning, I sent messages to every government, every military command, every scientific organization that might listen. I explained what I was fighting, what humanity needed to know. What happened? Senator Howard Clark happened. Grace's voice turned cold. He was chairman of the Coalition Defense Committee. He saw an opportunity. A monster to fight. An enemy to unite humanity against. Defense contracts worth trillions. Political power that comes from fear. She showed him the buried communications. Messages intercepted and deleted. Scientists who tried to verify her claims silenced or discredited. A systematic campaign to ensure that the Void Queen remained a monster in the public eye. He buried everything, Ethan said slowly. Everything. And every time I save a world, every time I stop a devourer incursion before it can spread, the Coalition sees nothing. They only see the worlds I destroy. The evidence I'm forced to burn. Grace sat down heavily, suddenly looking very tired. I've been fighting alone for 12 years. No allies, no support. Just me against something that wants to consume every conscious being in existence. Ethan thought about everything he had believed. The briefings, the reports, the certainty that the Void Queen was a threat that had to be stopped. Why tell me this? He asked. I was sent to kill you. Grace looked up at him. Because I've been watching you, Commander Cole. Your record. Your choices. The times you disobeyed orders because you knew they were wrong. The people you saved at Kepler Station when everyone told you to run. She stood and walked toward him, stopping close enough that he could see the tears she was fighting to hold back. I'm tired, Ethan. Tired of being alone. Tired of being hated for doing what has to be done. I thought maybe, just maybe, you might be the one person who would understand. She pressed something into his hand. A data chip. This is everything. All the evidence I have. The communications Clark buried. Sensor readings from the worlds I destroyed, showing the Devourer signatures. Everything you need to know the truth. Ethan looked at the chip, then at her. And if I still decide to kill you? Grace stepped back and spread her arms, leaving herself completely open. Then you kill me, and humanity loses its only defense against the Devourers. And in a few years, maybe a few decades, there won't be anyone left to remember that any of us ever existed. She wasn't afraid. That was what struck him most. She was ready to die. She had been ready for a long time. Ethan put the chip in his pocket and turned toward the door. I need to think, he said. And I need to verify this. Take all the time you need. Grace's voice followed him as he walked away. But not too much. The Devourers don't wait. And right now, they're heading for a colony called New Bristol. 4 million people. They have maybe 3 weeks before the incursion reaches them. Ethan stopped at the doorway. 3 weeks? 3 weeks. That's how long you have to decide if you believe me. And if you do, that's how long we have to save them. He left without another word. But the data chip burned in his pocket like a promise, and Grace Harper's tired eyes followed him all the way back to his ship. The shuttle ride back to the horizon's edge was the longest journey of Ethan's life. His crew was waiting when he docked, their faces a mixture of relief and curiosity. Katie grabbed his arm as he stepped out of the shuttle, checking him for injuries like a worried mother. You're alive, she said. I was starting to think I'm fine. Ethan walked past her toward the briefing room. Everyone with me, now. They gathered around the central table, the same place where this mission had begun. Ethan placed the data chip on the surface and activated it. Holographic displays filled the room with information, evidence, proof of everything Grace had told him. This is what the Void Queen gave me, he said. And before you ask, no, I haven't killed her. Because I think everything we've been told is a lie. He explained everything. The architects, the devourers, the worlds that had been lost before Grace ever arrived. The conspiracy led by Senator Clark to bury the truth and profit from fear. When he finished, silence filled the room. Katie was pale. Leo looked like he was going to be sick. And Dana stared at the display showing Thessaly, her homeworld. The sensor readings clearly showed Devour signatures present before the Void Queen's fleet arrived. Her family, everyone she had loved, had been consumed by something from between dimensions. Not killed by the woman she had hated for 3 years. No. Dana's voice was barely a whisper. No, this can't be right. I wish it wasn't. Ethan's heart ached for her. But the evidence is clear. Cross-reference it with Coalition archives. I already did on the shuttle. Every world the Void Queen supposedly destroyed shows the same anomalous readings that were dismissed as sensor errors. Those weren't errors. They were devourers. Leo worked furiously at his console, pulling up classified files and comparing them to the data Grace had provided. He's right, the engineer said finally. It all matches. The Coalition has records of these readings from every destroyed colony. They just never connected them. Or they were told not to, Katie said darkly. Clark, that bastard. Dana hadn't moved. She stared at the display with eyes that saw nothing, tears streaming down her face. My family, she said. They were already gone before Grace arrived. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Dana. I know this doesn't make anything better. No. Dana wiped her face roughly. No, it doesn't. But at least now I know who really killed them. And it wasn't the Void Queen. Ethan looked around the room at his crew. We have a choice to make. Right now, the Coalition thinks we're still pursuing our mission. We can go home, present this evidence, and hope someone listens. But Clark has buried everything before. He'll do it again. So, what's the alternative? Katie asked. We stay. We fight beside Grace Harper against the real enemy. Ethan's voice was steady. New Bristol. 4 million people. The Devourers will reach them in 3 weeks. Grace is going to try to save them, but she's been fighting alone for 12 years. She needs help. If we do this, we become traitors, Leo said quietly. The Coalition will hunt us. Our families will be questioned. Everything we've built, gone. I know. Ethan met his eyes. That's why I'm not ordering anyone. This is a choice each of you has to make for yourselves. Katie laughed, a short, bitter sound. You think I'm going to fly away and let 4 million people die because some politician decided they were acceptable losses? I've been following your crazy decisions for 6 years, Commander. I'm not stopping now. Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I became an engineer because I wanted to build things. Save things. If those creatures are real, and they're really coming, then walking away makes everything I believe in a lie. They all turned to Dana. She had the most reason to hate the Void Queen, the most reason to refuse. Dana looked up, and there was something new in her eyes. Something harder than grief. For 3 years, I dreamed about killing the Void Queen, she said. Every night, every moment I wasn't on duty, I imagined 1,000 different ways to make her suffer for what she did to Thessaly. Her hands clenched into fists. But she didn't do it. Something else did. Something that's still out there, still killing, still consuming worlds. Dana stood, her voice rising with cold fury. I want to kill the things that actually murdered my family. And I want to kill every last one of them until there's nothing left. Ethan nodded slowly. Then we're agreed. One question, Katie said. How exactly are we supposed to fight interdimensional space monsters? No offense, but the Horizon's Edge isn't exactly equipped for that. Grace Harper has been fighting them alone for 12 years. She knows how. Ethan pulled up the communication system. And right now, she's waiting to find out if she still has to do it alone. He opened a channel to the Void Queen's flagship. Grace's face appeared on the screen, tired and uncertain. Commander Cole, she said. Have you made your decision? We have. Ethan stood straight, his crew arrayed behind him. You've been fighting alone long enough. Tell us what we need to do. For a moment, Grace didn't respond. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. Not the sad smile from before, but something genuine. Something hopeful. I never thought I'd hear those words, she said. Come aboard. All of you. We have a lot of planning to do, and not much time. As the Horizon's Edge moved to dock with the massive biomechanical flagship, Ethan felt the weight of everything they were leaving behind. Their careers, their reputations, the safety of being on the right side of a lie. But he also felt something else. Purpose. Real purpose. For the first time in years, Dana came to stand beside him at the viewport. Do you think we can actually win? She asked. I think we can try. Ethan watched Grace's ship grow larger before them. And right now, trying is more than anyone else has done. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. The airlock opened, and 4 Coalition soldiers stepped through to join the terror of Galaxies. 3 weeks passed faster than Ethan thought possible. Grace taught them everything she knew about the Devourers. How they moved between dimensions. How they infected worlds. How to recognize the signs of an incursion before it was too late. And most importantly, how to kill them. They're not invincible, she said during one of their training sessions. Nothing is. But conventional weapons don't work. Their bodies exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. You need weapons that can reach across that barrier. She showed them the technology the architects had left behind. Weapons that fired light that burned in frequencies human eyes couldn't see. Shields that protected against attacks that came from directions that didn't exist in normal space. Ships that moved through dimensions the way normal vessels moved through vacuum. This is insane, Katie said, studying the control interface of her new fighter. Beautiful, but insane. Can you fly it? Grace asked. Katie's grin was all the answer she needed. More all eyes came. Word spread through channels Grace had maintained for years, reaching people who had seen the truth and been silenced. Scientists who had detected the Devourers and been discredited. Soldiers who had survived encounters with the creatures and been told they were imagining things. Even a few Coalition officers who had access to the buried communications and knew what Senator Clark had done. By the time they reached New Bristol, their small fleet had grown to 12 ships. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was more than Grace had ever had before. The incursion has already started, she reported, studying the sensor displays on her flagship's bridge. They're coming through in the northern continent, near the mountain ranges. Population is light there, so we have time before they spread to the major cities. Ethan stood beside her, his crew at their stations alongside Grace's own people. The Horizon's Edge held position nearby, ready to join the fight. What's the plan? He asked. I go down to the surface and close the rift they're using to enter our dimension. It's the only way to stop more from coming through. Grace was already preparing, adjusting the strange armor that seemed to grow from her own skin. The rest of you handle the ones that have already crossed over. And the infected. Dana looked up from her tactical station. Infected? People who have been touched by the Devourers, but not yet consumed. They're still alive, still conscious, but the creatures are inside them, controlling them. Grace's voice was heavy. There's no way to save them. Their minds are already being eaten from the inside. The kindest thing we can do is end their suffering quickly. The thought was horrifying, but Ethan had seen enough in his career to know that sometimes kindness meant hard choices. We'll handle it, he said. Grace looked at him for a long moment. I know you will. She turned to address everyone on the bridge. We save as many as we can. We stop the incursion. And when it's over, We disappear before the Coalition arrives to blame us for everything. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Welcome to my life. The battle for New Bristol was unlike anything Ethan had experienced. The Devourers were nightmares given form. Creatures that shifted and changed and attacked from angles that made no sense. They fell on the planet's northern settlements like a wave of darkness, consuming everything in their path. And behind them came the infected, the bodies of colonists walking with movements that were almost right, but not quite. Their eyes empty and their mouths opened in silent screams. Katie flew her new fighter like it was an extension of her own body, weaving through attacks that would have destroyed any normal ship. Leo worked miracles from the horizon's edge, keeping their systems running despite damage that should have been fatal. Dana fought with a fury that was terrifying to witness, cutting down infected and devourers alike with weapons that burned across dimensions. And in the center of it all, Grace Harper descended to the planet's surface alone. Ethan watched from orbit. As she walked into the heart of the incursion, a single figure of light against an ocean of darkness. The Devourers swarmed toward her, sensing the power she carried, wanting to consume it. She let them come. Then she became a star. The light that erupted from her was visible from space, a pillar of burning energy that tore through the rift between dimensions and sealed it shut. The Devourers screamed, a sound that echoed in minds rather than ears, and began to die. Without the rift to sustain them, they couldn't maintain their grip on reality. They faded like shadows before dawn, but it wasn't over. The infected still remained, and they were everywhere. All units converge on population centers, Ethan ordered. We need to eliminate the infected before they can spread to survivors. The next 6 hours were a blur of combat and desperate rescues. The fleet's ground team swept through settlements, putting down the infected with weapons that dissolved their corrupted flesh. They found survivors hiding in basements and bunkers, terrified people who didn't understand what was happening or why. "We're with the Void Queen," one of Grace's people explained to a group of rescued colonists. "She's fighting to save you." The colonists stared in disbelief. The monster from the news feeds saving them? It didn't make sense. But there was no arguing with the evidence of their own eyes. By the time Coalition warships appeared on long-range sensors, the incursion was over. Grace had returned from the surface, exhausted but alive. 4 million people on New Bristol had been saved, minus the 300 who had been infected before help could arrive. "Time to go," Grace said, her voice hoarse. "We've done what we came to do." The fleet scattered, jumping to predetermined coordinates across the sector. The horizon's edge went with Grace's flagship, disappearing into the darkness between stars before the Coalition could get close enough to identify them. Later, in the quiet hours after the battle, Ethan found Grace standing alone in an observation bay. She was watching the stars, her face unreadable. 300 people, she said as he approached. 300 I couldn't save. You saved 4 million. I know. She didn't look at him. It's never enough. It's never enough to make up for the ones I lose. Ethan stood beside her, both of them gazing out at the infinite darkness. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore," he said. "That's what we're here for." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to him, and there were tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I spent 12 years being a monster," she said. "It's going to take some time to get used to being human again. Take all the time you need." Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. "We're not going anywhere." Behind them, through the viewport, more ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. More allies answering the call. More people who had learned the truth and chosen to stand beside the terror of Galaxies thought the war against the Devourers had only begun. There would be more battles, more losses, more impossible choices ahead. Senator Clark would hunt them. The Coalition would brand them traitors. The road ahead was dark and uncertain. But for the first time in 12 years, Grace Harper was not walking it alone, and somewhere in the darkness, the Devourers sensed that something had changed. Their prey was no longer scattered and ignorant. Humanity was waking up that the war for the galaxy had begun, and humanity was finally ready to fight.